new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 70 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. We're 1 week away from district tournament starting for the smaller classifications 1 through 4A. So we are right around the corner, just a month away from the Weekend of Champions at Conway at the University of Central Arkansas. And to bring in, talking about the latest news, we will talk with Coach Kevin Bohannon, as we always do. Kevin, it is insane. I was posting your rankings a little earlier, and I didn't really think. I knew we were getting close to the end of it, but to think that it's only a month away, because it all goes by just – we always talk about how fast it goes by, but districts next week, district tournaments next week. So the postseason, while it may be a little bit of a ways away from the for the 5 and 6A classifications, 1 through 4A, their last week of the regular season is now.
That's exactly right. And, Brooklyn has done a really good job this year keeping me updated when the postseason is upon us. So, yeah, they got their last matchup with Highland tonight. They can wrap up the 3-4A. You got a big matchup with Maumelle and Sylvan Hills in Class 5A. Valley View and Greene County Tech are sitting at the top of the 5A East. They do battle tonight in the doubleheader. So, a lot of good baseball this week to wrap up regular season play in classes 1A through 4A.
And before we get started to talk about all the things, breaking down what happened last week, also talking about some more of the latest news, I want to remind everybody, if you haven't already, subscribe on YouTube, hit that notification bell so you're notified anytime we release an episode. Also, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any of the audio platforms, we are there. Real quick love to our sponsors that make this show possible: Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, whether infield, renovation, lip removal, and edging, anything for a natural surface. Jeremy Rice and his crew have you covered. 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218. Also, Boom Boom Floor Shine, serving all of the Southwest Arkansas region. You need some TLC for your VCT. Call 870. You know what? I just realized I got the wrong thing up. Call 870-833-0521. And last but not least, Chinook Ceadery. Chinook Ceadery is your place, whether you want jalapeno ranch, lemon pepper, smokehouse barbecue. They've got 8 different flavors for your liking. You can get the sampler pack or the big bags if you want one particular flavor. You can enter referral code NSS Media for 10% off of your order. Again, that's NSS Media for 10% off your order, not just the first one, any. So let's get into it, starting in Class 6A, as we always do. Kevin, I know one of the biggest things that one of the bigger games that we had, of course, we've got a Tuesday and a Wednesday matchup, Fayetteville and Rogers Heritage. So Fayetteville, Heritage leads, I know, as coming into Tuesday night, Heritage leads the 6A West by a game. And then did Heritage take the first game? Was it 6-5 or
Fayetteville won last time? Fayetteville
won. I think it was, so by 1 run. So 6-5. So Rogers now leads Heritage by a half a game going into Thursday, or I can't remember. I know that as of Monday it was that, but nonetheless, Rogers leads the race so far, and then Fayetteville took game 1 over Rogers Heritage, and of course we'll have game 2 here tonight.
That's exactly right. And we expected the West to be as crazy as it always is. It's just more balanced this year. We had Fayetteville, as you know, ranked. They were number 1 before Conway took over, and they're in the number 2 spot this week. But they've got heat on them. They've lost 3 conference games now, which puts them, behind the 8 ball when looking at Rogers. So that was a good series. Last week, Harbor and Fayetteville last week, 12-11 was the second game, and that's something that you wouldn't have expected. Heritage got to Mark Brissy a little bit last night. He went 6 in the 3rd inning. Fayetteville ended up walking that game off. They've had a flair for the dramatic this year, but who's going to catch Conway? That's the biggest thing. Bryant took them to the wire. It was 2-0 the other night. So the Hornets are playing really good baseball right now. They make their return to the Super 7 rankings at number 7 this week. And Little Rock Christian, they're just – Brandon Eller, they just keep rolling along. They're 15-3 right now. sitting in second place behind Conway. The Warriors making a move in their first season in Class 6A.
And I know Cabot, they're a pretty good team still, but they're came into this week at 10-9. I know they lost to Bryant. They've taken, I think, Little Rock Christian, if I'm not mistaken, beat them the other night. But that's one that you still feel pretty good about, even in that fourth spot right now. If the playoff, if the season were to end today, they would be the 4 seed there. What is your take on the Panthers right now after taking a few on the chin?
They still got Will Leslie and Jacob Murray. The key for them this year is not being able to have Cale Turner, who signed with Oklahoma State. And there's been some talk whether he'll throw out of the bullpen or something, but who knows what's going to happen there. So they're not 100%, but, Ronnie Goodwin always has good ball teams. They're going to play hard. They're going to play smart. And, he always has his teams ready to go at the end of the season, which we've seen in the past.
No question about it. So that's kind of, not a whole lot of change from last week as far as, really a big talk of the conversation throughout this whole entire season has been, of course, the West. Who is anybody going to overtake the West? And Conway comes in still remaining undefeated this week. So I may have to check this before. Who does Conway, the conference, so they have a game and a half lead as of going into Tuesday night. They've got a game and a half on Little Rock Christian. I was going to look at the rest of their schedule and pull that up. So they've still got Catholic. They've got Little Rock Christian this week. Going to be an interesting one, of course, and then Cabot as well, North Little Rock. So certainly, and then a very intriguing last game. And of course, this is weather permitting. I know once we get to these out of conference games at the end of the season before state, weather comes into a factor of if they are able to get them in or not. But you got a really intriguing matchup there with Hot Springs Lakeside, who is one of the better 5A teams there. So it's not out of the realm for the Wampus Cats to finish undefeated, but, they've got some tough games left. But, just the way that they've been playing, even in the close games, to close those out.
Yeah, and, they're going to go to Bentonville, or Bentonville's going to come to Conway on the 28th of this month. So that'll be next Monday. Conway scheduled that game because they had Little Rock Southwest on Tuesdays. They should be able to play their JV team, no disrespect to Southwest. But Conway, wanted to get a shot at a team from the West. So that'd be a good matchup for them. We're looking at, and I told Coach Leighton Harden, I was like, you guys could really end up undefeated going out of this thing. So that hasn't happened. I think 2012 was the last time, somewhere around in there. Fayetteville did it at 32-0.
Now, your team back when y'all won state at Mills, weren't you, or maybe was the year before that y'all went undefeated or had a really good year and lost in the final?
Yeah, we were 30-0 going into the finals in '98. Lost to Batesville 15-13 at Mills. That was back in the day where you played the state tournament all the way through to the finals at the respective location. 1999 was the first year that they had the weekend of champions at Baum Stadium back then. And the 99 was the first year, which was my senior year. We played Conway in the finals that year, beat them.
How crazy. Yeah. Well, and that's funny that you mentioned them even back then, because I wanted to ask, as someone who was undefeated, lost in the final round, is it better in a lot of cases maybe to lose a game, especially before the state? Now, I know that in a game like that, a high scoring game like that, it could have been anybody's ball game, and that's just how baseball is. But is it maybe better sometimes to lose a game in a lot of cases, just from your experience?
I think it is. And having done it as a coach, it was better for us to lose at certain times during the year, because it really kind of got us refocused. That 98 team, we just had focus the entire year. It didn't matter who went down or, if there was an injury somewhere. We were without our, number 2 pitcher playing against Monticello, and had our number 3 or number 4 guy on the mound and beat them. So it helps to lose at some point, but you get to going so much and you stay focused, and it just comes natural, and everything's just habitual that you just go out there and expect to win. So there's a pro and con for saying, hey, yeah, losing is good at some point during the year to get a focus back. It really just depends on the team and how they're playing at that point.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Then down in Class 5A, the Van Buren Pointers have been a good topic of conversation lately. Of course, Weston Wilcox got the team-funded player of the week, and this is kind of what I'd written in this, or what we had written in the story, was that his play, he was a big part of why they stayed in the state tournament race. They come into this week 3 games back, and man, speaking of the 5A West, it was a brutal week for Greenwood. Greenwood lost 3 games. They lost twice to Van Buren and then once to Fort Smith Northside. All of those games by a run. But then you also look at a Van Buren team that's won coming into Tuesday, has won 5 of its last 6, including that Monday night victory and a big win over Harrison. So I think I had actually asked you maybe around, not the preview pod, I guess it was the first one that we did after the preview pod a few weeks in, when Van Buren got off to a slow start. I was like, can the Pointers end up turning around? They're not playing, that great right now, but you think that they can turn around? They've been pretty good over the past few years. And right now, they've still got some work to do, but they are not out of it for the postseason.
That's exactly right. They're 4-5 in conference right now. So, they got some work to do. That's the big thing. So they're behind. They're 3 games behind right now when you look at Harrison and Russellville at the top of the conference. So I think they can. Look, they beat Harrison on Monday this week. They beat them 5-3. Wilcox had a complete game. What he did last week was, at Greenwood, he was perfect for the week. When you hit about 1,000 for the week and you're pretty good on the mound, that's player of the week type stuff right there. So they've shown later in the year that's when they get hot. When they won their state title a few years back, that's when they got hot. So coming off they've been to the semifinals a couple of times over the past 4 years. It's their time to play.
Also, some notable games from last week. Maumelle swept Benton, and talk about some close games, some one-run games. Maumelle swept Benton 2-1 and 5-4. Intriguing non-conference matchup that I was keeping up with, or non-class matchup, out-of-class matchup. Valley View 9-0 over Cabot. Again, I know we talked about Cabot. They're been a little bit down right now, but still feel pretty good about the Panthers. But talking about the 5A Central, coming in again to this week, Maumelle was leading, then Sylvan Hills 2 games back, Valonia at 3. And this really reminds me of the 5A. Jared and I had a very deep conversation on the 5A Central because we knew that was going to be loaded with softball. Then you've got Greenbrier 3 games back out of first place, followed by Benton and Beebe, which we know Benton and Beebe are 2 very good ball clubs. But it's just such a loaded on both sides. You've got in softball and baseball a legit 5 or 6 teams that could compete for those state tournament spots. But the problem is there's only 4.
That's exactly right. And we knew somebody was going to get left out. Greenbrier took a step in the right direction last week with sweeping Beebe. And I talked to Chance Cleveland after the head coach for BB. He's like, man, we just didn't play good ball. He said, Greenbrier, they pitch well. If they score runs, they're going to beat people. They're going to beat really good teams. So that was what happened last week. Maumelle and Sylvan Hills tonight. If Sylvan Hills somehow sweeps that, there's going to be a tie for first place. So Benton has work to do. They're sitting, about the 5 spot right now. If they can jump back in it, I think – and it's going to come down to runs. So here's the tiebreaker, guys. And I know people are going to be asking about this. If you go head-to-head with the team, if you split right there, it's run differential with a max of 5 runs. Okay, so if you beat a team 14-2, it's just the same as you beat them 7-2. So if the other team beats you 10-5, it's split right there. So then you go by your conference wins. So if you actually upset the number 1 team, that may get you into the state tournament.
Speaking of that, I'm glad you brought that up about the rules of like tiebreakers and stuff. So page 59, I've been asked that like 3 times in the past week. I talked to Bobby Swafford to confirm at the AAA, and it's page 59 and 60 that breaks it down. I actually sent that to somebody this morning. So while you brought that up, if anybody happens to be watching or listening and is curious, 59 and 60 of that rule book. But as you mentioned, Sylvan Hills and Maumelle Tuesday. Maumelle, I believe, still has both BB and Greenbrier left to play. Benton still has Sylvan Hills and Valonia, and then BB has Maumelle at the end of this month. So it's if Sylvan Hills is to, and of course by the time that this is out, probably this series will have already happened. Yeah. But if that does happen, we're going to have all kinds of chaos. That's just there's still so much to figure out in this conference.
That's what you want,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it happened last year. Sylvan Hills beat Little Rock Christian. Sylvan Hills beat Maumelle. So I think it could happen. Peyton Lee's throwing well right now, and Chandler Eubanks. I talked to Coach Nick Watson from Maumelle, and Eubanks is throwing really well. They'll have Blaze. It'll be some really good pitching matchup. Of course, Everett Bird from who has 5 home runs on the year now, pitcher that's going to McLennan Junior College. He was one of our team-funded player of the week. So a lot of really good arms on display tonight at Maumelle.
No doubt. And then, of course, we've got we'll recap the Valley View GCT series next week, since that's going to happen on a Tuesday night. Of course, Valley View they got some out-of-conference matchups with a red-hot Shiloh Christian team out of 4A, also Rogers. Then you look at the South. It's been a lot of South has been the Hot Springs schools, 2 out of the 3, at least between Lake Hamilton and Lakeside. Now they play on Friday. Lake Hamilton already has the 6-2 advantage over the Rams in that one, but 2 very, very good and very consistent teams that we've seen in the South, as well as just Class 5A overall this year.
Yeah, Lake Hamilton beat Sheridan 9-0 last week, so Sheridan's sitting in the 3rd spot. It was like this last year with Lake Hamilton. They had an early season loss to somebody they shouldn't have lost to. Look, Arkansas High is probably going to be the 4 seed out of that conference. Arkansas High beat Lake Hamilton 5-4 in their first conference game this year back on March the 3rd. So Lakeside pitching defense has been there. How are they going to score? Last time it was Drew Morgan hit a 2-run home run, put them up. They ended up losing 6-2. So Lake Hamilton's just more of a complete team. Matt Wiggins just done a great job once again this season.
One thing I noticed in 5A, and this would be like, this obviously wouldn't be shocking since there's only 2 conferences in 6A, but so out of the Super 7 rankings this week and the outside looking in combined, it's all Central teams and West teams, minus in the South you got Lake Hamilton and Lakeside, and then you got Valley View out of the East at number 1. So that shows why we talk about the West and the Central so much.
Yeah,
right there.
And Greene County Tech, look, they beat Collierville last week, 6-3. Yeah. Collierville was ranked. I know Scorebook Live has them at 21. That was way too high of a ranking. Perfect Games got them at 48th in the nation. Collierville's a good team. I think that it'll be, Valley View should sweep them, but they've got to figure out a way to hit. Greene County Tech does. They're young, like we've talked about. Cannon Ring's been hurt. Their freshman Brooks Robinson's had an issue, a little injury. He's, not quite back to himself yet. So it'll be interesting to see. And it's tough because Valley View, 51 straight wins. Shout out to my boy Andy Runyon for calling that out. 51 straight conference wins. And Valley View's healthy finally. Look out.
Yeah, no doubt. Then on down to Class 4A. And now that, since we're starting district next week, we'll kind of break down some of the conferences here and just looking at, and as if we haven't talked loads and loads about Region 1 already, but Shiloh, you talked about last week, the tear that they're on. They got a 1-game lead coming into the week. I think it's either 13 or 14 straight. And now all they have left in their conference is Berryville to play. I think they've pretty much got that locked up for the district tournament there. So we'll talk about that. And then also Conference 3, Brooklyn by a 1.5 over Highland. And we've got those 2 squaring off both Tuesday and Thursday this week. Yeah,
and if they win, Brooklyn wins one of those, they're conference champs, which I fully expect them to do. Highland lost to Gosnell early in the season. Gosnell swept that. What Gosnell team, and I put 4 in the outside looking in this week on Class 4A because it's so even. You look at a lot of these teams, Gosnell's 13-7, Crossett's 15-5. DeQueen lost to Arkadelphia 7-0, and then came back and beat Arkadelphia. So Arkadelphia lost to Bauxite 12-11. That's a bad loss. Like I said, no offense to Bauxite, but Arkadelphia's lost a few. Warren keeps kind of rolling along right there. Morrilton is the team that a lot of people, and of course they're in that 5-4A North, 5-4A North. They're the team that a lot of people don't want to play right now, and it's evident. Harding Academy did sweep them; they just keep taking care of business. So we still have a lot of parity right there. The shocker, I knew Shiloh Christian was playing well, but they beat Gentry 15-1, and Anthony Nail's Pioneers have been playing out of their league. They've been playing above their weight class this year, in my opinion. They've had a good season. And then they beat Gravett. So, they're going to get a guaranteed spot in the regional tournament if they win it. Talking about the Saints, because the 1 seed gets a bye to the semifinals. That's what needs to happen for that bunch. That's, Alan Gum, great job this season. But, Brooklyn, PA, Morrilton, one of these one of these 11 teams is not going to make the state tournament, and it's going to be a shame. I hate to say that, but in the perfect world, all 11 teams would make it. But then you got Magnolia, Monticello, Nashville that could pop up in there. You got so many teams on that. Wynn, Stuttgart. You got so many good teams. It goes back to the preseason when we were talking about, 15, 16 teams to watch out for this season, and it's really unfolded kind of like we thought it would.
I was going to ask you about Robinson because, look, we're not going to obviously, you look at the rankings and you and I just in conversation, we're not going to hold to pretty lopsided losses to good 5A competition against them. But then you look at of course, on Tuesday, as we're recording here, they've got Pulaski Academy. They've still got Morrilton twice. They still play 6A Catholic, 6A Little Rock Christian Academy. Coach Delaney, we know that he's going to put his guys up against a gauntlet, and he should with the roster he has. How do you see the Senators fare? I think they're going to be just fine. Again, those two losses to 5A competition, I think they're going to be just fine down the stretch.
Heber Springs had won their first few conference matchups and were kind of looking good. So that was one that he wanted to make sure he got a sweep on. I say he, I mean Coach Delaney. So, yeah, you throw Logan Eichler, you throw Blackwell. So, Brady had a good outing. He had 11 strikeouts over 5 innings, I think. So he had to make sure he got those. Now, you gotta at least split PA, and that's going to be the matchup that I'm most excited to see. And then Morrilton into the season is going to be rough.
I was also going to ask you about Lone Oak because so Lone Oak is coming in right now. They've like it's not what it was. I'm trying to say this in the nicest way possible. It wasn't what it hasn't been in the past, and that's very obvious. Obviously, they had a coaching change. They graduated a massive class, but they have won. What is it? 5 of their last 7. So, maybe something's starting to kind of, and you look at that conference race, it's really interesting there with them and Southside Batesville. They swept they swept Stuttgart last week. Huge week there. I know that they've got Southside this week. Got it also. I think St. Joe. How did that St. Joe go game on Monday? Didn't they play them?
They beat St. Joe's.
Okay, so they did beat St. Joe. I didn't see that for Monday night, but. I don't think you put Lone Oak in that state title contender status really right now, but by any, you still got to see a little bit more. Maybe they'll heat up. We'll see what happens. But that is a really intriguing race there in the 4A6 to me.
Yeah, it is. And we expected Wynn to win it. They had the talent to do it. So we lost to Southside. Southside's, they lost a few from last year. Had a season, the best season in school history, making a regional, making a state tournament. So, yeah, it's, those 3 teams, and then you add Lone Oak into it. So, yeah, they're battling back, losing your coach, goes and takes the AD assistant principal job, and they've kind of just kept winning. So it was good for them to be in a different conference too. I think they needed kind of a change of scenery. Because imagine if they would have been thrown into the gauntlet, which is the 5 North. It would have just been – it would have been unfair. It's just a battle week in, week out. It's like the SEC. So you're going to get to see when I say this, the regional is going to be interesting because the 3 is matched with the 6. You got 1, 4, 3, 6, 5 North, 5 South, 7, 8. Okay, those are the regional matchups. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the 3 up against the 6 and if there's any upsets.
No doubt. Then heading down to 3A, one of the things that I noticed kind of just doing some research from last week, Manila, they had a tough week. So they were number 3 last week. They dropped down to the outside looking in. They lost to and they didn't lose to bad competition by any means, but 6-1 to Newport or to Harrisburg and then 7-1 to Newport. So just kind of looking at some of those conference races, Elkins, they swept Green One, or did they sweep them last week, or was it because I guess they did sweep them because they won that twice. So I'm kind of talking about the same things here, but all they have left is last place Lincoln this week. So feel pretty good about Elkins there. You look at Melbourne, they've got a 1.5 lead on Cave City. Those 2 teams have split. And then in Conference 3, Newport leads by a game, but that's the thing. Like, that's kind of the big question that I have in 3A right now. They lead it by a game, but would you consider them? And I mean, obviously the favorite for the regular season, but for the district tournament where anything can happen.
Yeah, and as we know, district tournament's all about depth at that point. And somebody like Highland last year or Jonesboro West Side beat Wynn in the first round. Like Wynn had to win 2 games to get into the regional, and we fully expected them to do that, and they didn't. They got upset in the first round, and there was players were used wrong, things like that. So that 3-3A conference has been so even this season that Harrisburg could win it. Walnut Ridge could win it. Newport, Manila. You got 4 teams, and the reason 4 of them are in the top 10 is because they've been beating up each other all year. They all 4 have good records, and nobody from 3A has really separated themselves. You look at Elkins. Elkins, the past 4 years, has won conference, gone to regional, done really well right there. They haven't played as many games this year, but they're undefeated in conference. They lost to Booneville last week, and Booneville's down a little bit this year. So you got to look at Charleston. Charleston's on top of that conference. So in Melbourne is 17-2 right now, but they lost to Cave City. I mean, they've got the most wins in Class 3A, but they're not the best team. So I think it's Ashdown, Genoa Central. Ashdown beat Genoa 4-2 in their conference head-to-head matchup. And then it's about 8 or 9 teams that I think any of them could win. That's why we've had so many teams at the 3 spot this year. And, Melbourne might have been there one week. Newport's been there a couple of times. Newport is the one that has surprised me the most with their staying power. They've gone through the conference play. They've only lost twice now, but they've also lost to Riverside, but everybody's lost to Riverside this year. I mean, so
including 5A number 1 Valley View.
So, how that works out, somebody may be on the outside looking in. Rising plays. I know they played Drew Central last week. I think they played DeWitt on Tuesday.
Yes. Yep.
And the winner of that one will win the 8-3A, which is really big because they're going to play the 7 in regional play. And the 7 has always been good. You got Ashdown, you got Genoa Central, Bismarck, the HGFC, Harmony Grove, Washita County has moved over to the 7. So there's been some seasons where 4 teams from the 7 make the state tournament out of that region. Now, Washita County, Harmony Grove won it last year and got to the semifinals, but they've lost quite a few, and it's a tougher conference this year. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes down. Don't sleep on Walnut Ridge as well.
Yeah, I was going to add in there that, because was adding in, Rising, of course, beats DeWitt back 6-2 back on March 21st. So see if the Dragons can get some revenge or if Rising will get the sweep. So we'll see what happens there. Heading on down to Class 2A, as you said, Riverside, I mean, they remain the number 1 team for another week. And then, of course, you got Woodlawn there at number 2. Parker's Chapel got a huge matchup again on Tuesday that we'll recap next week. The top 3 overall, and then, of course, within their conference between Parker's Chapel and Woodlawn. So also in Conference 1, Lifeway Christian leads that race. Then 2, Cedar Ridge, they are currently in the driver's seat now. They lead Sloan Hendricks by 2 games with 3 conference games remaining. But then last week, really, I guess Corning was pretty much the only one that was really going to be any kind of competition to the regular season conference crown to Riverside. And Riverside just absolutely imposed their will on them.
Yeah, and it's like, we talked about last week, or, I think I was talking about the other day, Riverside could beat 4A teams with Zane McClure on the mound. And shout out to Zane. He, should have been in our player of the week running last week after, big win over Valley View. He went 6 innings in that game. So, Riverside, they take care of business. Woodlawn was the first team to get to 20 wins. Of course, they played more games than anybody else in the state. They're 21-5 right now. That Woodlawn Parker's Chapel matchup is going to be a good one, I believe. Tate Hall has just had a phenomenal year. Hitting 437. It's like he's an RBI machine. He's done well on the mound. They've got more depth this year. So, Woodlawn's going to be there. Hackett dropped a couple of games last week, but it was out of class, maybe, same, and then out of class to a couple 3A teams. McCrory kind of jumped up right there, but Palestine Wheatley still sitting at number 4 right now, 14-6. They've got control of that 6-2A conference. Murfreesboro playing well. got to give a shout out to my boy Brody Maroon.
He's been
holy smokes, 4 for 4, and this was on Monday night. I don't know who they beat, but it was 11-1. He walked them off. He was 4 for 4 with 3 home runs and a double, and 7 RBIs on the night. He was our player of the week 2 weeks ago. He's like, I'm not done.
Yeah.
I'm going to get another T-shirt by the time this year's over.
Yeah.
So, Murfreesboro with, him on the pitch around him, he's going to have the Jace Laviolette treatment by the time people get to regional. So shut them down. Southside B Branch, I want to bring up the Hornets real quick. They beat Conway Christian last week. I'd been catching some flack on Fearless Friday, which thanks to Laney and supporting our rankings this year. How the football 2A champs weren't getting any love. And I was like, go beat somebody. You got a chance to do it. Southside B Branch beat them. So Southside B Branch is back in it. Now Cedar Ridge, sitting at the top right now. Carlisle 17-7. Yeah, they haven't beaten McCrory or, PW yet. So we'll just kind of see how the Bison do, going into the district and regional tournaments.
I wanted to, you mentioned Brody Maroon and Murfreesboro, and I was going to get your take on, because May 2nd, so the first week of May, they'll get that rematch against Spring Hill. And last week when Brody got team funded player of the week, that out of 4 games, that was their only loss, a 10-8 loss to Spring Hill. So, I know that, Murfreesboro has kind of been the talk of the town, a lot of what Maroon has done, particularly in the past few weeks. But how do you see that game going again, when Murfreesboro gets their chance at redemption?
The last time it was, 4 game, that was one of 4 games. A lot of times in 2A and 3A, it's how the schedule sets up. So if they're the first game of the week, I give it the edge to Murfreesboro right there. If you catch them in the middle of the week or the latter part on a Thursday, I think anything can happen. You saw that with a 10-8 score last time, and it was it went into extra innings, I believe. I think it went 8 innings.
8, yeah.
Yeah, it went 8 innings. So, first of the week, you may be able to maybe throw your 1 and 2 at them and maybe clinch that conference title, get that 1 seed. But, if you get the 1 or 2 seed going into the district tournament, that guarantees a regional spot. It just sets up a better seeding, because if you go into a regional, you definitely want to be playing a 4 versus a 3 when you're in Class 2A.
And last but not least, in Class 1A, real quick, want to talk about the West Side Eagles' big 4-3 win over Armorel in I guess that would have been a top 5 overall matchup. Yeah, so Brooks Hip, 3 for 4, triple. I think it was triple and a 4. What am I trying to say? RBI triple. I couldn't think. My tongue was tied.
Bases clearing triple.
Yeah. Bases clearing triple. So big win there for West Side there. I get because didn't Armorel beat them or Viola beat them last week? That's what we were talking about. Viola beat them, so they rebounded from a really big loss, at least in terms of like the rankings and of course the 1A2 standings, and took down Armorel there in a big top 5 matchup for Class 1A. So looking at the 1A1, Lead Hill and Norfolk there, and of course they'll play for I guess the regular season title. Norfolk won the first matchup 16-4. Of course, the Party Crashers, I guess they're still the Party Crashers. They're playing really well again this year. And then Armorel and Hillcrest. Hillcrest is half a game behind Armorel right now. We just talked about them, of course, falling to West Side there. Then in Conference 4, they've already played, I think, both of their games. Magazine and Scranton have, but it's coming down to the wire. And then Magazine leads that race by half a game.
Yeah, so Magazine and Scranton, that's really the tightest race that you have right now in terms of conference standings. Norfolk, I think they had won 14 straight games before they lost out of conference, of course. Maybe out of classification. I think it was out of classification. I think they lost to a 2A school. They're 18-5 right now. Nemo Vista, Nemo's tough again, but they lost to St. Joe's. St. Joe's is going to win that conference. Mount Ida, we talked last week how their undefeated streak came to an end 26-21 against Danville, and they lost a couple more games, but they were to 3A teams, I think. So the big one, Westside Grosse Ferry needed that bounce back win over Armorel, even though it's not a conference game. That goes a long way towards what it could look like in the playoffs, and especially in the postseason, because that's really big for the Eagles right there. Shane Davis' club needed to have a bounce back win. Viola, they've split now. So it was 12-11 the first game. Westside got that win, and then Viola put it to them last time. So these two teams are used to playing each other 3, 4, maybe even 5 times a year. So they know each other very well. Last couple years, you threw Norfolk into that mix. So it's, West Side and Valor are sitting at the top of the two right now. And then the South, hey, Taylor and Mount Ida look like they're on a collision course for a regional championship again. Of course, that 2 years ago was your state championship matchup in 1A. You're muted. You got all the way to the end.
Oh, so close. So Taylor, they beat Bearden 10-0 last week. Then Bearden sits a game behind them. Yeah, I know, and that's the thing is
they were undefeated.
Yeah, I know. Well, they get another chance at him on May 2nd. They might, in the postseason. Who knows? But we'll see what happens on May 2nd there. But yeah, Taylor just. Yeah, I think Kevin at this point, because softball, I've been getting accused of saying that Taylor is down in softball. I mean, a lot of it's in good fun, but I've been getting accused on the softball side of saying that they're down. I haven't said they're down. I just said outside of Ayla, their ace pitcher, that's the three-time defending state tournament MVP, they lost a lot because they graduated so many, but they're still our number one team. But that's what you kind of feel like in baseball too, because I mean they did lose. I mean every year you lose one or two key pieces, but I really think that at this point, and I'm not saying that baseball and softball there is not talented this year, but I feel like a lot of it is really just coaching.
Yeah,
and fundamentals. I mean, I think a lot of it is coaching and fundamentals this year. Again, I'm not taking anything away from the kids. I'm just saying, as far as a whole, I feel like it is more fundamentals and coaching this year, more so than maybe just talent overall.
Yeah, and Brian Fowler, we talked about it last week. The ABCA gave him one of the National Coach of the Year awards. And this might be one of his best coaching jobs because, like you said, they're not running 4 or 5 guys out there that could just shut about anybody down. They're still good. They're still loaded at the top of the lineup, and they'll have one guy. They may need some stuff to break right in the postseason, but they're battle-tested, obviously, because they play out-of-state competition. Their only in-state loss is to Murfreesboro, who's obviously Class 2A, and we've talked about them. So, it's just they keep going along, and it's really like Woodlawn, honestly. It doesn't matter who the guys are. It's the program. It's how the guys come in and work every day. And it goes for the softball as well. There is a level of expectation down there, especially when you've won as many state championships as these guys have, that, okay, last year's gone. It's time for us to make our mark. And you get compared to those. When you're that good and you're winning that many state championships, you're not compared to other schools. You're compared to what has come in the past from your own school. And is this as good as the 2012 team or the 2018 team or the 2021 team or what have you? So that's what you start comparing yourself to. And that's when some people kind of get, we're not getting this, we're not getting that. You're still the best team in the state right now. And Class 1A, make the statement in postseason.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that's kind of the vibes. Yeah. I think that's another thing too, is that it's one thing and not take anything away from any kind of success, regular season, postseason, but that's one thing with a lot of teams is you'll see sometimes like a team gets really hot and then maybe falls on their face in the post. We saw that a few times with the HGOC. I mean, they would have great regular seasons and then just kind of fall flat on their face in regional and the regional tournament didn't get the state until last year, of course, when they made that run to the semifinal round. But that's the thing. And Jared and I talked about this the other night on 1A, like Scranton softball, the runner-up from last year is really good again. I think that last year in particular in the softball state champ, you can maybe say the same about baseball with Greer's Fair because that game was like, 11-2 or something like that, or it was just pretty lopsided. I don't really think it's always that Taylor is that much better. It's that they're that much more experienced on that stage. Yeah, I mean, they prove that they're the better team, but I don't think that it's one of those deals to where it's like, oh, well, they just ruled them or they just mopped the floor with them. A lot of that is just because the lights are extremely bright, and Taylor knows all about that.
That's exactly right. And it matters if you've been there before. And I'll go back to, when we started this show talking about those 98, 99 Mills teams. Yeah, we were at Baum Walker, but we knew, how to get through a state tournament, how to work through certain things and, when you win 63 games in 2 years, you've seen just about everything. And no, we didn't go undefeated or have an undefeated run because we went from Class 3A to Class 5A. So we were playing Jonesboro's and West Memphis and Sylvan Hills. So it was just a different opponent across the diamond from us. So, but you've been there before. You've played, you've been in the grind, the battle with these guys, and it goes a long way. We go back to football season, Kyle. The guys that have been to War Memorial Stadium don't get freaked out by it. When teams go and play Catholic there's a bit, or Parkview, there's a bit of a shock factor when you walk in and see so much space, and it's, oh man, the Razorbacks played here, or I'm standing on the field of greatness. It's that mental part of the game that a lot of, sometimes it just gets in the way.
No doubt about it. Well, I want to remind everybody before we sign off here that you can subscribe, of course, on YouTube if you prefer to look at our pretty faces, or if you just want to listen to the audio version, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Again, thank you to Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, Boom Boom Floor Shine, and Chinook Cedary for making this all possible. Kevin, we'll see you next week when we start previewing district tournaments, recapping the final week of the regular season for some, and then, of course, discuss the 5 and 6A conference races.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Best of luck to all the teams as they finish up the regular season and get into postseason, my favorite time of the year.
And that'll do it for episode 70. Crazy talking about how fast things go by. It's crazy to think that we've had 70 episodes. Yeah. I mean, you think about it, I know we do 2 with baseball and softball, but in basically a little over a year, essentially like a year and a week or so, we've done now 70 episodes. So yeah, it's good to keep this thing rolling. But thank you all for listening to episode 70. We will catch you next week for Kevin Bohannon and all of us here at Natural State Sports. I'm Kyle Sutherland. We'll see you next week.